Hello and welcome back to Capital City Beads. My name is Christina, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create a beautiful woven bracelet using a needle and thread. We're going to be using the right angle weave technique and adding a few layers on top of that. It's going to have this cute little button closure, and it's super easy for beginners. We're going to need some 10-pound fire line. It's super durable, a size 10 beading needle, some 6mm fire polish beads. You need two colors, an inside color and an outer color. That outer color, you're going to need twice as many beads. A size 11 seed bead, a 3mm fire polish bead, and a 2-hole Superduo bead. You can add a button of your choice. I'm going to use this cute little bumblebee button. It does have a shank on the back. You can use any button you like. I'll teach you how to create the proper size button loop. We're going to start with 8 feet of thread. I know it sounds like a lot, but it does get eaten up pretty quickly. You're going to need 8 feet of your 10-pound fire line thread. You can use 4-pound or 6-pound fire line if that's what you've got at home. I like using 10-pound because it is the most durable, and this bracelet will get a lot of action. The thread is kind of thick, so you do need to smash the end of it with your flat chain nose pliers. It'll give it a little flattened area that'll make it easier to thread through the needle. Once you've got that flattened, you can hide the very tip of that thread in between your fingers so that you just see a little speck of that thread, and you're going to lay the eye of your needle right on top of that thread, and it should pop right in the eye of that needle for you. We're not doubling up our thread, so just pull through enough to leave a little bit of a tail so you can grab onto it as we work through our project. We're going to be putting on a stopper bead on the very end of this thread. Use a bead that's not part of your project, so grab something random, and we're going to use a different color, different shape, whatever, random bead that you've got. Go ahead and thread that bead onto your needle and move it all the way down to the very opposite end of the thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. We're going to secure this bead by taking our needle and going through the opposite hole so that our thread is wrapping around that bead. So I'm coming out of one side, I'm going to loop my thread around and go through the other side so that that thread wraps around the bead and secures that bead in that place. It can still slide around a little bit, but it's going to help protect those 6 inches of tail that we need for tying off and keep our starting row in place. So now we've got our stopper bead on there, we've got our 6-inch tail there at the end that we're saving for the end of the project, and we're going to string on our first sequence of beads. Start with the size 11, an inside bead, size 11, an outside bead, size 11, an inside bead, size 11, and an outside. We start with the size 11, but we're not going to end on a size 11. And this sequence of beads is only for the very first row. You can find this sequence typed up in the description of this video. We're going to push our beads all the way down to our stopper bead and get them in position for our first stitch. The shape we're looking for is a cross or a square shape. This is a right angle weave, so we've got some right angles with our square. To do this, we are going to pass our needle through all of these beads and come out that very top inner bead. So go through that first size 11, the inner color. We're going to pull all the way through just for those 2 beads to get our tension, and so you can see that this is going to be the shape that we need. Now my beads are in a little square, but I have to get my thread and needle up to that top inner bead. To do that, we're going to make a right angle. We're going to go up the side and then right angle over to the right. We're going to pass our needle through the 11, the fire polish, and the 11. Pull that all the way through I like to complete each action rather than trying to pass my needle through all the beads at one time. If you just need to do a few beads at a time, no problem. And then we're going to pass it through the 11 and the fire polish so that our needle is coming out of that top center bead. And we're going to be coming out just the fire polish. We're not going to go through that size 11 that's on the right side of that fire polish. This is the starting position for every single row from here on out. You want to make sure your thread's coming out of the right of that center bead. Now we're going to add our next sequence. Size 11, outer color, size 11, inner color, size 11, outer color, and one more size 11. So on this row, we do start and end on an 11. This sequence is going to repeat until we get to the end of the bracelet. So we have an 11, an outer color, an 11, an inner color, an 11, an outer color, and an 11. This is going to be the sequence you thread on every single time from here on out. String that all the way down. And we need to get that to come up and around so that continues the little square shape. To do this, we're going to pass our needle through that center color. Right now our thread is coming out of the right side of that bead hole. We're going to thread our needle into the left side of that bead. Just the fire polish, not that size 11 that's already secured on our bracelet. We're going to be going through just that fire polish bead. And that needle is going to be coming from the left, going through to the right, and then we're going to pull that all the way through, and the beads we just strung on are going to cinch up to continue our right angle weave. Now we need to get our thread up to that next center bead because we're building from bottom to top. So now we do the right angle. We're going to go up the 3 beads on the side, the 11, the fire polish, and the 11. Pull all the way through to complete that action and make sure our tension is correct. And then finish off by passing it through that top fire polish bead to get ourselves in position for the next row. Once you pull that through, you'll notice your thread is now coming out of the left side. In order to make this easier on yourself, so it's easier to remember, just flip it over. And now our thread is coming out of the right, same as it was in the beginning. So that way we just have to do the same exact thing every time. Before moving on to your next row, make sure your tension is tight. Get everything a nice little tug. Make sure your beads are all secure and in the right place. Double check that you didn't forget any of your size 11s. They are important later. And now you are ready to string on your next sequence. 11, outer, 11, inner, 11, outer, 11. Same sequence we did before, same sequence we're going to keep doing. You can find the sequence typed up in the description of this video. Double check you have everybody on your needle before moving forward. We have the 11, outer, 11, inner, 11, outer, 11. Now we can secure this onto our bracelet using our right angle weave. Our thread is coming out of the right side of that bead, so we're going to come around and stick our needle in the left side of that top fire polish bead, and that's just the fire polish bead, none of the 11s. Pull all the way through, and your little square will pop right up. Complete it with the right angle. Go up the right side, the 11, the fire polish, and the 11. Pull all the way through to make sure your tension is nice and tight, and pass your needle through that top fire polish bead. Your thread is now coming out the left side of that bead. To make it easier, we're going to just flip it. So now my thread is on the right side, and I can do the exact same thing I've been doing. You're going to repeat this exact same sequence until you have 17 inner colors. That will give you about a 7-inch bracelet. If you want to make something smaller or if you want to make something larger, all you have to do is either add or subtract a sequence of these 3 beads that we're adding on here. The 17 inner colors gives you about a 7-inch bracelet. It is a little snug on me, but I think I like it because it doesn't flip around so easily. Continue doing this until you've got those 17 beads, and then we will add our button. You can go ahead and pause the video right now and keep working until you've got all your beads secure. I've stopped at 16 inner colors to show you how I determined if I needed to add another row. I wrapped it around my wrist and I took a look at the amount of space I had left. My button has to fit in that space. I think my button's a little smaller than that space, so I'm going to add one more row, making 17 inner colors. The bracelet's going to feel a little floppy at this point, but that's okay. We're going to be filling it in with those accents on the side, like the Superduos, and the bracelet will stiffen up a little bit. I'm going to add one more row to make 17 inner colors. Your thread should be coming out of that very last 6mm inner color. Your thread is coming out the right side, same as it has been in the past. And now we're going to attach our button. To do this, we're going to create a loop with some seed beads. String on 6 size 11 seed beads. Put your needle through the shank in the back of your button, and then string on 6 more size 11 seed beads. Our thread right now is coming out of the right side of that fire polish, so we're going to pass our needle through the left side of that fire polish to complete this loop to attach our button. Pull nice and tight to make sure that's nice and secure. And now we're going to pass our needle through all of those size 11 beads and our button again. We're going to be reinforcing this because this is going to get the most action. So stick your needle through some of the beads. You're not going to be able to get through all 12 beads at once. So go through a few, pull a little, go through a few. Make sure your needle passes through that shank again. Go through a few more beads. It will look like it's loosening up a little bit. That's okay. Before we move on to the next step, we'll give it a tug and tighten up that button loop. You want to go through that last size 11 that you put on there, not the one that's attached to the bracelet, but that last set of 6 size 11 seed beads, and pull all the way through. Hold on to your button and pull the thread, and that'll help cinch that up and tighten up that loop for your button. Now we're ready to start moving down the right side of our bracelet. There is a little gap between the button loop and that first seed bead, so we're going to add a seed bead, and then we're going to add a Superduo in between all these other seed beads. So step 1, put a seed bead on your needle and go through that first seed bead, fire polish, seed bead. That little seed bead you just put on is going to fill in that tiny gap between your button loop and that first set of beads. You should now be coming out of that first seed bead on the other side of that 6mm fire polish, and we're going to fill in that little gap between the seed beads with a Superduo. Put one of the holes of the Superduo on your needle, it doesn't matter which one, and then pass your needle through the seed bead, the fire polish, and the seed bead. You'll now be in the next section where you'll add another Superduo and in between those two size 11 seed beads. Your needle should be coming out of a size 11. You add one Superduo, go through the size 11, the fire polish, and the size 11. I got a little knot. It was not a bad one. It was just one of the ones you could slide out. Knots happen. We're going to continue adding one Superduo in between these seed beads until we get all the way to the end of the bracelet. You can also make this bracelet by adding one size 11 in this place if you don't want to add all these layers. You could just put one size 11 between these beads and the bracelet looks super beautiful that way too if you want a little bit more simple design. Continue adding those Superduos until all of the spaces are filled with a Superduo. I'm now on my very last Superduo for this side. I'm going to slide my stopper bead off. We don't need him anymore. We're going to string on that last Superduo and pass our needle through the size 11, the fire polish, and that last size 11. You want to make sure when you end this, you're coming out of only that last size 11 seed bead. Now we're going to create the loop for our button to clasp into. The size of your loop is going to be determined by the size of your button. I'll show you how to check on that before moving forward. For my button, I'm using 24 size 11 seed beads. This bumblebee button is 15 millimeter. And 24 size 11 seed beads is just the right amount of beads so that my button can actually fit in the loop, but it's not too big so that my button just falls out and my bracelet falls off. Pull your beads all the way down and create that button loop and hold it in place with your finger. Hold it as tight as possible and see if your button fits sideways inside that space. If your button doesn't look like it's going to fit, add a few more beads. If the button looks a little bit too big, take some off. But for this size button, 24 beads is perfect. So now we're going to pass our needle down the left side, going through the seed bead, the fire polish, and the seed bead. We're getting ourselves in place so that we can start adding the Superduos down the other side of the bracelet. We're not going to reinforce this loop because we are going to do that later. So we'll do that later with the tail and when we come back up, we'll reinforce this loop. Now that you're coming out of that first size 11, we're going to add our Superduos in between those spaces. Doing the same thing we did down the other side of the bracelet, we're going to now do it on this side. Add one Superduo, go through the seed bead, the fire polish, and the seed bead. Add your next Superduo and repeat until you've come to the end of the bracelet. I've come all the way to the end and I'm adding my very last Superduo. I need to pass my needle through the seed bead, the fire polish, and one seed bead. We're only going to be coming out of just one seed bead. We need to get to the other side of the bracelet, so we're going to pass our needle through that 6 millimeter bead at the top. Flip it over so it's a little easier to see. And then pass your needle through the seed bead and the fire polish bead. So it's going to be just that one seed bead and that one fire polish bead. We're not going to go through that last seed bead. You want to come out of the fire polish bead. Make sure it's just that one seed bead and the one fire polish bead. Now that our thread is coming out of that 6mm fire polish bead, we're going to add 2 little beads to bridge us over to that open hole of the Superduo. So string on 2 size 11 seed beads and then pass your needle through that outer hole of the Superduo. This creates a nice little bridge to help us get into position so we don't have thread kind of hanging out anywhere. So coming out of that top hole of that Superduo, we're now going to add a series of beads and we're going to be filling in the space between each Superduo. That sequence of beads will be 2 size 11 seed beads, 1 3mm fire polish, and 2 size 11 seed beads. This pattern is going to repeat between each Superduo on this side and on the other side. Pass your needle through the next open Superduo hole. Pull, 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 and you've filled in that first space. We're going to repeat this again. 2 size 11 seed beads, 1 3mm fire polish, and 2 size 11 seed beads. Pass your needle through the next Superduo and fill in that space. You're going to continue doing this until you come all the way to the end of the bracelet, adding the same sequence of beads between each Superduo. Now I'm on my last sequence of beads. I have my 2 size 11, 1 3mm fire polish, 2 size 11, and I'm going to go through that last Superduo bead and pull all the way through. Now we need to add those 2 seed beads that bridge us between the Superduo and the fire polish. So string on 2 size 11 seed beads and go through that last 6mm outer color. We're also going to pass our needle all the way through all of the seed beads that create our button loop. This is going to reinforce that button loop so that as this gets some wear, that button loop has some extra security. My little tail is kind of in the way. Just pull him out and we're going to tie him off at the end, but he's a nuisance at the moment. Keep passing your needle through all those beads. You'll only be able to go through a few beads at a time. So just go through a few, give it a tug, go through a few, give it a tug until you've come all the way around that button loop. Once you've come all the way around, you're going to pass your needle through all of the seed beads and come out of that first fire polish bead, that purple fire polish bead on the right. We're going to get ourselves lined up so that we can add our accent beads on this other side. Your needle should be coming out of only that 6mm fire polish bead there on the outside. Now we can add our 2 size 11 seed beads to bridge us between that fire polish and that outer Superduo hole. So add 2 seed beads and go through that first fire polish. Now we're going to continue adding that same sequence of beads that we did on the other side in between all of these Superduos, starting with 2 size 11, 1 fire polish, 2 size 11, and going through that next open Superduo. Continue this pattern until you've come all the way down to the opposite side of the bracelet, where we'll be ready to tie off our threads. I'm adding my last set of accent beads here on the side, 2 11s, fire polish, 2 11s, and going through the very last Superduo. We need to add our 2 little bridge beads. String on 2 size 11s and pass your needle through that top 6mm bead. We're going to go through the 6mm and just 1 size 11 seed bead. Give this a little tug. Make sure you've adjusted your beads so that they're bridging nicely and sitting where you want them to sit. We're coming out of that first size 11 and there is that little gap from our button loop before. We do need to add 1 more bead to complete that loop. String on 1 size 11 and pass your needle through a few of those beads on your button loop. Pull, 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 and your bracelet is pretty much finished. That's all the beads we're going to add. Now we just need to tie off our thread. To do this, we're going to create a little hitch knot between some of these seed beads. Pass your needle up in that space in your button loop. We're not actually going in any beads, we're just in the space that your button loop makes. Before you pull your thread all the way through, stick your needle through that loop that it creates. Pull nice and slow and make sure that that knot goes in between the 2 beads that you're next to. You don't want it wrapping around the beads. Make sure that little knot lands right in between the beads so that we don't see it. Pass your needle through a few more beads and we're going to create 1 more hitch knot. I've gone through a few of the beads. I don't want to do my knot right by the shank. So I've gone through 3 more and we're going to do 1 more hitch knot. Pass your needle up inside that space in the button loop, not actually in a bead, just inside that space. Pull, pull, pull. Before you go all the way through, pass your needle back down through the loop that it creates, tying that knot right between those beads. Feed your needle through a few more beads and trim off the excess. You want to snip that thread as close as possible. You can add a dab of glue if you like. But you want to snip that as close as possible. Now we're going to take our needle and we're going to put it on that pesky little tail from the beginning. And we're going to tie this thread off the same exact way. I'm going to smash my fire line so it's easier to thread on my needle. Hide it between my fingers and lay the eye of the needle right onto that thread. I'm going to go down. I'm not going to go in my button loop because my button loop is pretty full on this side and I don't want to risk breaking a bead. So I'm going to pass my needle down the 6mm fire polish and through my 2 little bridge beads, and I'm going to tie my knots on my little accent beads on the outside. Stick your needle underneath the accent beads and then hitch that little knot between the seed beads. Pass it through a few more beads and make 1 more hitch knot by passing your needle underneath the bridge and through that little loop. Pull, pull, pull. Make sure your knot lands between the beads so that we don't see this. Finish off your thread by threading it through a few more beads just to hold that tail in. And you can trim it and dab a little glue if you like and cut as close as possible. And that's it. You have created a beautiful woven bracelet. You now know how to do right angle weave. If you want to use this bracelet for your own designs, go ahead. Please tag us or give us credit at Capital City Beads. I would love to see all of the designs you guys create and the different color combos you guys come up with. So please let us know on social media if you've made our bracelet. We would love to see and share to our stories. You can find all of these supplies on our website, capitalcitybeads.com.